The morning of my sister's wedding, I woke up at 5:47 a.m. Not because I was excited, not because I was getting my hair done or lacing up a bridesmaid dress or rushing to grab my bouquet. I woke up because I hadn't slept. I had been lying in that bed staring at the ceiling, replaying a text message in my head over and over and over again. 11 words. 11 words that my own mother sent me at 9:23 p.m. the night before the wedding. It's better if you don't show up. You're a distraction. My mother uninvited me from my sister's wedding. And not just any wedding, a wedding that I personally had written a $14,000 check to make possible. So I lay there in the dark and I thought about it. I've really thought about it. And then, at exactly 8 a.m., I picked up my phone, pulled up the venue's number, and I called. The woman who answered had the most cheerful voice. She said, "Good morning, Rosewood Grand Events. How can I help you?" And I said, calm as I have ever been in my life, "Hi, my name is Danielle Carter. I'm the card holder on file for the Harmon Carter wedding booking. I need to cancel everything. Refund it all back to my card." Silence on the other end. Then she said, "Ma'am, the wedding is today." And I said, "I know." To understand what happened on that wedding day, you have to understand where Kayla and I came from, because nothing in this story makes sense without the backstory. And the backstory is messy. My mother's name is Renee Carter. She's 61 years old. She lives in the same house in Charlotte she's lived in since 1989, and she is, without question, the most emotionally complicated person I have ever known in my life. I want to be fair to her. I really do. Because she wasn't a bad mother in the obvious ways. She fed us. She clothed us. She showed up to parent-teacher conferences. She made sure we had Christmas presents under the tree every year, even when money was tight. And trust me, money was always tight. But there was something else about my mother. Something that took me years of therapy to actually name. My mother had favorites. And it wasn't me. Kayla is 4 years younger than me. She was born when I was 4 years old, and from the moment she came home from the hospital, something shifted in our house. I don't even think my mother did it consciously, but Kayla was lighter skinned than me. Kayla had good hair, as my grandmother used to say. Kayla was quieter, more agreeable, softer in the way that adults say things like, "Oh, she's so sweet." And I was not that. I was loud. I was opinionated. I asked too many questions. I pushed back on things. By the time I was 8 years old, my mother had a name for it. She called it being difficult. "Danielle, why do you always have to be so difficult?" That was the sentence of my childhood. Kayla never got called difficult. Kayla got my baby. Kayla got the benefit of every doubt. If there was one piece of cake left, Kayla got it. If someone had to share a room, it was me. If plans had to change, I was the one who had to adjust. And the wild thing, I accepted it. For most of my life, I just accepted it as the natural order of things. Some kids are the favorite, some kids aren't. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was stronger for it. What I didn't realize was that accepting it for so long had trained everyone in my family, my mother, my sister, my aunts, my cousins, to believe that I would always accept it, that I was a limitless resource, that I would absorb whatever was needed and never, ever break. That belief was about to become a very expensive mistake. While they stayed the same, I changed. I left Charlotte when I was 22, packed up a 2008 Honda Accord with everything I owned, drove to Atlanta, and started over. I had a communications degree from UNC Charlotte, $800 in my savings account, and a job offer from a mid-sized marketing firm that was paying me $36,000 a year, which felt like I had won the lottery. It wasn't the lottery, but it was a start. Here's what I'll say about myself. I am not naturally gifted at a lot of things. I am not the smartest person in the room. I am not always the most creative, but I am relentlessly consistent. When I decide to do something, I don't stop. I adjust, I adapt, but I do not stop. Over the next 12 years, I built something real. I moved up at that firm. Then I left and went to a bigger one. Then I started consulting on the side. Then the consulting became its own thing and the firm became the side job. And then one day I looked up and I was running a boutique brand strategy consultancy with 4 full-time employees and a client list that included names I used to see on billboards. By the time I was 32, I was clearing multiple 6 figures. I had a condo in Midtown Atlanta. I drove a car that had a heated steering wheel, which if you've never experienced that in a Georgia February, you don't know what you're missing. And through it all, every promotion, every new client, every milestone, I stayed connected to my family. I called my mother every Sunday. I sent money when she needed it. I flew home for holidays. I showed up. I showed up even when it was hard, even when I'd land in Charlotte and within 20 minutes feel myself shrinking back into that little girl who was always too difficult. I showed up anyway because they were my family. And Kayla, look, my relationship with Kayla as adults was better than it was when we were kids. She'd grown up, I'd grown up. We weren't close in the way some sisters are close. We didn't talk every day. We didn't take girls' trips together, but we were cordial. We were family. So when she called me in the spring of 2025 to tell me she was engaged, I was genuinely happy for her. His name was Marcus Webb. He was from Charlotte, too, an engineer, nice enough guy from what I could tell. They'd been together about 3 years. I'd met him twice at family gatherings, and he seemed solid, quiet, the kind of man who sits in the corner at cookouts and laughs at everything, but never starts any drama. Good. Lord knows there was enough drama already. How I ended up with a $14,000 receipt. The engagement was in April. The wedding was set for the following October, so they had about 18 months to plan. About 2 weeks after the engagement, my mother called me. Not a Sunday call, a Tuesday afternoon call, which usually meant something was coming. We did the small talk for maybe 3 minutes, and then she got to it. She said, "Danielle, you know Kayla and Marcus are trying to plan this wedding, and Marcus's family doesn't have much, and Kayla doesn't have the kind of savings to do what she wants to do." And I remember sitting in my office chair, already knowing where this was going. She said, "I was wondering if you could help, just, help with some of the costs since you're doing so well." Since you're doing so well. That phrase, that specific phrase, I cannot tell you how many times I have heard that phrase weaponized in my family, "since you're doing so well," as if my success was a debt I owed them, as if I had taken something from the family by building a life and now it was time to pay it back. But I want to be honest with you. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was actually warmth. Strange, right? But it was, because here was my mother calling me and asking me to be part of my sister's wedding, to contribute, to matter. And after a lifetime of being the difficult one, the one who was pushed to the side, the one who had to adjust, being asked to contribute felt, in a twisted way, like being included. So I said yes. But I didn't just say yes in a vague, I'll send a little something kind of way. I said yes like Danielle Carter, which means I did it right. I called Kayla. We had a long conversation. I asked her what her dream was. She told me she wanted something elegant. She wanted a ballroom. She'd always dreamed of a wedding with high ceilings and chandeliers and a real dance floor, not a backyard situation, not a church fellowship hall with folding chairs. She wanted the Rosewood Grand. If you're not from Charlotte, the Rosewood Grand is a venue in the South End neighborhood that does about 30 to 40 weddings a year. It's not the most expensive venue in the city, but it's gorgeous. Exposed brick, vaulted ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place that makes every photo look like it was taken by a professional, even if it was just your cousin with an iPhone. The package Kayla wanted, ceremony and reception combined, including the catering coordination fee, the basic decor rental, and the staffing, came out to $14,200. I put my card on file. I paid the deposit of $5,000 that same week, and I told Kayla, "This is my gift to you. You don't have to pay me back. Just let me be part of this." She cried. She actually cried. She said, "Danielle, I don't even know what to say." I said, "You don't have to say anything. Just have an amazing wedding." And she said she would. What she did not say, and what I did not know at the time, was that there were conversations happening in our family, conversations that I was not part of, conversations about the wedding, about the guest list, about the dynamics between Marcus's family and ours. Conversations that were going to determine whether or not I had a seat at a wedding I had just paid for.
The guest list drama I wasn't supposed to know. Let me tell you about Marcus's aunt. Her name is Brenda Webb. She is 58 years old. She is the matriarch of the Webb family, and from everything I can tell, she is the kind of woman who walks into every room already believing she is the most important person in it. Marcus is close to his aunt, extremely close. His mother passed away when he was in high school, so Brenda essentially raised him through his teenage years. I respect that, genuinely. That's a beautiful thing. The problem was that Brenda had opinions about everything, about the venue, about the colors, about the food, about who was going to sit where, and most specifically about who was going to be in the wedding party. Now, Kayla had asked me to be a bridesmaid early on in one of our first planning conversations. She had said, "I want you standing up there with me, Danielle." And I had said yes, and I had been touched, and I had gone out and not complained one single time about the bridesmaid dress she picked, which was a shade of dusty sage that I will be charitable and simply describe as not my color. But somewhere along the way, and I pieced this together later from things my cousin Tasha told me, Brenda Webb had started making noise about the wedding party being too big and unbalanced. Marcus had 2 groomsmen. Kayla had 4 bridesmaids. Brenda felt like it looked lopsided. She wanted Kayla to drop one bridesmaid, and guess which bridesmaid Brenda had a problem with? If you said Danielle, go ahead and give yourself a point. Now here's the thing. Brenda Webb had never met me. Never. Not once. We had never been in the same room. She had seen photos of me. She had probably heard things about me from Marcus, and that was the entire basis for her opinion. What she'd heard, apparently, was that I was loud and outspoken and that I had a lot of energy at family events, which, and I want to be careful how I say this, I think was a very specific kind of coded language. My cousin Tasha, who is the family gossip, and thank God for that, told me that Brenda had said, and I'm paraphrasing, that she didn't want the wedding photos to be overshadowed by someone who was going to make everything about themselves. I was going to overshadow the wedding by existing, by being a bridesmaid in my own sister's wedding, which I had paid for. And somehow, this information made its way to my mother, and instead of my mother saying, "Excuse me, that's my daughter, she's not going anywhere," my mother heard it, processed it, and decided that the path of least resistance was to make me the path of least resistance. That is the only way I can explain what happened next. 11 words. The night before the wedding, the night before, I was at home in my hotel room. I had flown back to Charlotte 2 days earlier. I had already been to the rehearsal dinner. I had smiled. I had toasted. I had taken pictures. I had done everything right. I was in bed at about 9 o'clock doing the thing where you're not quite asleep, but you're not quite awake when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up, assuming it was my alarm or a spam email. It was a text from my mother. Danielle, I've been thinking and I talked to Kayla. It's better if you don't show up tomorrow. You're a distraction. We want the day to go smoothly and it will be better for everyone if you just sit this one out. I hope you understand. I love you. Silence. I read it 3 times. Then I put the phone face down on the nightstand. Then I picked it back up and read it again. There are moments in your life that split your timeline in half, before this moment and after. This was one of those moments, because in that instant, reading those words, something inside me that had been slowly bending for 34 years finally went still. Not broke. Still. There's a difference. When something breaks, it's chaotic, it's loud, there's crying and shattering and emotion everywhere. When something goes still, it gets quiet, it gets clear, it gets precise. I didn't cry, I didn't call her back, I didn't text my sister, I didn't call Tasha, I didn't do anything. I put the phone back on the nightstand, I turned off the light, and I thought. I thought about that $14,200. I thought about the deposit receipt in my email inbox. I thought about the fact that the Rosewood Grand had my name, my phone number, my email address, and my credit card on file. I thought about the fact that as the card holder, as the party who had executed the contract, I had the right to make changes to that booking. And then I set an alarm for 7:58 a.m. so I'd be ready the moment they opened. And I closed my eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, I slept like a baby. The calmest I have ever been. My alarm went off at 7:59. I sat up. I washed my face. I made a cup of coffee in the little hotel room coffee maker that takes forever and makes mediocre coffee, but that morning it tasted absolutely fine. At 7:59, I pulled up the number for Rosewood Grand Events. At 8 on the dot, I called. It rang twice. Then, "Good morning, Rosewood Grand Events. This is Ashley. How can I help you?" Very cheerful. Ashley sounded like she was having a great morning. I said, "Good morning, Ashley. My name is Danielle Carter. I am the card holder on file for a wedding booking today, the Harmon Carter wedding. I need to cancel the booking and have everything refunded to the card on file." Silence. A long silence. Ashley said, "Ma'am, I want to make sure I understand. You're requesting a cancellation?" I said, "Yes." She said, "The wedding is today, in about 8 hours." I said, "I understand that." More silence. I could hear her clicking around on a computer. She said, "Ma'am, our cancellation policy for same-day cancellations typically doesn't include a full refund." I said, "Ashley, I've read the contract. There is a force majeure clause and a cardholder dispute clause. I'm not disputing the service. I'm canceling as the primary contract holder due to a change in circumstances. I'd like to speak with a manager if the refund policy is something you need to confirm." More clicking. A brief hold. Then a manager came on. His name was David. David also sounded like he was not expecting this kind of morning. We spoke for about 12 minutes. I was calm the entire time. I was factual. I referenced the contract clauses. I confirmed my identity. I answered every verification question correctly because, again, this was my booking. And at the end of 12 minutes, David said,
Miss Carter, I've noted the cancellation. The refund will be processed within 3 to 5 business days. I do want to confirm you understand that this means the venue will not be available for use today. I said, yes, that's what I'm requesting. He said, okay, it's done. I said, thank you, David. Have a good day. And I hung up. I finished my coffee. I called the airline and moved my flight home to Atlanta up by a day. Then I sat down and I wrote my mother a text. Just one line. I hope everything goes smoothly today. And I meant it sarcastically, but honestly, I meant it for real too. What happened next? I wasn't there for. I heard about it in pieces from Tasha, from my cousin Jerome, and eventually from Kayla herself. Here is how I understand it went. The bridal party arrived at the Rosewood Grand at approximately 11:15 a.m. The wedding was scheduled for 1 p.m. There were guests, about 80 people, either already there or on their way. They pulled up to the venue. The doors were closed. Not locked with a chain and a dramatic padlock or anything cinematic like that, just closed. And when someone from the wedding party tried the door, a staff member came out and very politely said that the Rosewood Grand did not have a booking for today. Kayla, I'm told, thought it was a mistake. She called the venue directly. The venue confirmed the booking had been canceled that morning by the cardholder. And that's when Kayla said, and I know this because Tasha was standing right next to her, the cardholder, Danielle's the cardholder. And then the silence that followed that sentence was, by all accounts, significant. My mother, who was standing nearby, went from confusion to understanding to something Tasha described as a look I've never seen on Aunt Renee's face before. Marcus, to his credit, did not lose his composure. He quietly pulled Kayla aside. The guests who had arrived were milling around on the sidewalk, confused. Someone's grandmother had driven 2 hours and was sitting in a folding chair someone had brought out from a car. They scrambled. There was no way to get the Rosewood back. It was gone. They tried 2 other venues. One was booked, one was too small. A family friend offered their backyard, and I understand that is ultimately where the ceremony happened. No chandeliers, no dance floor, no vaulted ceilings. A backyard in October. Do I feel bad about that? Honestly, and I want to be real with you, the part of me that had been doing everything right for 34 years, the part of me that absorbed every slight and accepted every relegation and kept showing up anyway, that part of me was at peace. But the part of me that still loved my sister, that part ached. Not for her wedding, for the relationship underneath it, because a venue is just a building. What actually happened that day, the real thing that cracked open, was that for the first time, my family had to sit with the reality that I had limits. I was not an unlimited resource. I was a person. The conversations that followed. The aftermath was exactly as loud as you'd expect. My mother called me 14 times that day. I let every single one go to voicemail. Kayla texted me that night. The text was long. Parts of it were angry, parts of it were sad. She said I had ruined the most important day of her life. She said she couldn't believe I would punish her for our mother's decision. And that part, I'll be honest, that part stung because she wasn't entirely wrong. Kayla had not sent that text. Kayla was not the one who called me a distraction. But Kayla also did not stand up for me. She knew what our mother was doing, and she let it happen. And that silence, that easy, comfortable silence, was its own kind of answer. I responded to Kayla's text 3 days later. I was measured. I told her I didn't do what I did to punish her. I told her I did it because I needed her to understand, and I needed my mother to understand that my participation in this family is not unconditional, that my money, my time, my presence, those are not things you can take and then discard when it becomes convenient. I told her I loved her. I told her I hoped her marriage was happy. I told her that whenever she was ready to have a real conversation, not about the venue, not about the wedding, but about us, about the dynamic that our family had let calcify for decades, I would be here. She hasn't responded to that yet. My mother and I spoke eventually, about 3 weeks later. It was hard. It was not neat. There was no movie moment where she broke down and apologized and everything healed. She said she was trying to keep the peace. I told her some peace isn't worth keeping. We're in a careful, cautious place right now, testing the walls, seeing what's still standing.
What I learned about love, limits, and letting go. People always want to know, do I regret it? And my honest answer is no, but not for the reason you might think. I don't feel triumphant about an empty ballroom. I'm not sitting here celebrating a backyard wedding. That's not what this was. What this was, what this is the story of a woman who spent most of her life making herself smaller so other people could feel more comfortable, who gave and gave and gave because she thought that was the price of being loved by people who didn't naturally extend that love to her. And then one night at 9:23 p.m., someone sent her 11 words, and those 11 words, instead of breaking her, finally set her free. I don't know where things go from here with my family. I hope forward. I genuinely hope forward. I believe people can change. I believe my mother loves me in the way she knows how to. I believe my sister and I can find our way to something real. But I know this. I will never again write a check to sit at a table I'm not welcome at. I will never again fund a seat I'm not allowed to take, and I will never again let the word difficult make me feel ashamed of being a woman who knows exactly what she's worth. My name is Danielle Carter. I'm 34 years old. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina, and that was the last time anyone in my family made me feel like I was too much. If that resonated with you, if you've ever been the one who gives and gives and gets pushed to the margins, drop something in the comments. I want to hear from you. And if you're new here, welcome. You're in the right place.